First of all, I concur with Shulamit's point that we must not define ourselves by the Holocaust. That is to say, it must not be the overwhelming part of our identity, nor should we define, particularly when we're speaking to non-Jewish people, which most of us on this panel do most every day of our lives, define Jewish identity and Jewish history and culture by the Holocaust. It's an area of great concern if we do that, and we need to think very carefully and deeply about that. And it's a part of this question of process. Other thing is about audience. I think a couple of people here have mentioned audience. The young man the two young people that I quoted there fitted into David Bankier's type very well. They both are excluded from society because of their behavior. And are a difficult audience to get at because really they are not interested in this. In fact, the program we run for those groups is a filmmaking program. They do not come on a Holocaust seminar, they come on a filmmaking program.
And that's the way it's defined?
Yeah, they come on a filmmaking program to the Holocaust Center and they learn to make a film and they're empowered with the camera. And in the process of making the film, their subject is, what is this center trying to do? How would you describe what this center is trying to do? And so they follow the students and they follow the teachers, they speak to the survivors. And over a period of weeks, they make their film about what the center is trying to do. And they are empowered to tell their story of it and its values. The process for them is extremely important because it's the only way to get at it for them. They couldn't sit through a 45-minute session. And yet by the end of it, they're sitting through the whole day. But a couple of other things just come to mind here in terms of what it is that we're trying to achieve. And I want to just contextualize my earlier comments. In 1994, I was aware of the Holocaust to the extent that it had changed my life. We were building the Holocaust Center. We had put all of our time and resources into doing that. So awareness is not my problem. What I struggled with, and didn't even know I was struggling with, was making a link between what I was aware of and what was happening in my world. And in 1994, while the bricks were going up and the carpets were going down and the exhibition was being installed, genocide happened in Rwanda. And I wasn't there. Not physically, not spiritually, not psychologically. I wasn't there. I was not there with them. And I did nothing. And I mean nothing. And in 1995, ethnic cleansing was going on in Bosnia, and what happened in Srebrenica was a wake-up call, because there we were with a genocidal massacre happening less than a couple of hours' flight away from where we were, and still nothing. Making the cognitive link between what we know and what we're aware of and what we're prepared to do is not, be assured, is not necessarily going to happen in me, in you, or in our pupils. We have to make that step. And what I'm struggling with 15, 16 years on from all of that is, how do we make that step? How do I make that step? I want to end with two very, very, very brief stories. Armin Wegener, 1917, Armenia, in the German Medical Corps. The order went out, no photography, and he photographed what he saw. 1924, he's fighting for the justice for the Armenians. At the same time, Adolf Hitler is penning Mein Kampf. 1933, 1st of April, he's the only voice. He's the only voice. He's righteous among the nations. But why? He was ready, he was alert, he knew what to say, when to say it, how to say it. He could see what he was looking at and was prepared to speak out. Janusz Korczak. Let me tell you about Janusz Korczak. Her name is Halima Bashir. 2006, she stayed behind in Darfur to look after her orphans. She was a medical doctor. She had passage out. She stayed. The Janjaweed came. They raped the 8 to 13-year-old girls that were in her charge while she was made to sit and watch. She reported to the aid agencies. As a medical practitioner, she stayed and she did everything she could to look after her girls. 2 days later, the Janjaweed came back. They'd heard through their channels that she had told what had happened. They said to her, "Lady, you want to talk about rape? We'll talk about rape." They took her for 3 nights. They raped her. They released her and said, now go and talk about rape. And she does. And she wants me to tell you too. She wants me to tell everybody. Tomorrow her book is published. Remember, Halima Bashir, Tears in the Desert. Tears in the Desert.
So I'm listening to Stephen. Calls to mind what I heard. Again, he's a member of the Museum's Committee on Conscience. What he said at a conference last year, that we stand between what can be and what will be. And what shapes what will be are the decisions that ordinary people make today. And I'm making the plea, that, and I know surely you may disagree, but I would feel so much more confident if the decisions that shape what will be are informed and framed by the experience of the Holocaust. So that's the message I would want to leave you with. Thank you.
I think one of the things that we all have to work on, if we're thinking about decision making and some of the ethical lessons of the Holocaust, is learning more about how ethical decisions are made. And we have so much content to teach that sometimes we don't have time to learn about how you make an ethical decision. So I think that component, we have to work more on bringing that in to our teaching. Also, I want to leave you with one quick story of a very uninformed, uneducated farmer in Italy. The end of the war, he's taking everybody in. He's taking American POWs, he's taking former Nazis, he's taking victims into his house, and he says, I'm bringing them in because each of them has a mother someplace. And the question we raised from this, and it's a question I think that whether it's from Holocaust or whatever we're studying, we want to know, would we do that? Would we open our door to anyone simply because they have a mother and they're a human being? Or would we have to put it into context and think about it? And a lot of the questions that we raise as we look at the Holocaust are very much things like this that people had to grapple with, as with Janusz Korczak himself. So lots more about ethical decision making and the need, I think, for us to increase our understanding about ethics in our teaching. And so we do it. Okay.
Although I'm very impressed, I will not go into this direction, because then we should discuss whether we are educating normal people or holy persons, which is a very, very big difference and makes a big problem to teachers. I would like to go a bit deeper in the question of intercultural auditories for teaching, and I could tell you some stories about seminars in concentration camp exhibitions, seminars with films, movies, and documentations, of course, and how you need time and again time. Because this beginning in the world of the students, this very careful approach to their beliefs, to their experiences, to their emotions, it needs time, and it needs trust. And maybe it's more easy in my seminars than in the obligatory teaching of history at school, in sometimes very much conflict-driven situations where the teachers don't know very much about the children. And therefore I will only give you impressions of one class which we studied in a systematical scientific research. It was a small class, but In this class we had a Bosnian boy who had lived in a Serbian concentration camp and had lost some members of his family in there. And whenever he talked about the Holocaust, he talked about his personal experiences, but he never used the word concentration camp or the word Holocaust. He talked about Hitler and the Second World War, but it was quite clear that he really was talking about his trauma. We saw the, I have to add this, we saw the lessons, and we had interviews about the lessons and interviews about the biographies afterwards. So we knew much more than the teacher knew, and much more than the comrades, the classmates knew. Another one was a young, very intelligent, very politically engaged, moderate left-wing girl whose grandfather had been hanged after the war because of his activities in a concentration camp. She got it. But another very intelligent German girl, of course, best mark in history, she said, history has nothing to do with me. Never history can have to do something, anything with me. That's impossible. Another one was a Polish immigrant with a German passport. The others had not. Another one was a Turkish immigrant, without a German passport, but very well integrated. He had already a job because he did the work of Third World Fair Prices together with the German churches as a Muslim, without any problems. And the last one was a Latin American musician. He was working, he was earning his money, but he needed the German Abitur, and therefore he went to this class as well, and he just made 5 points because they need 5 points to get the Abitur. And he was not interested in anything else, not even in history, not even in Latin American history. It was, and the teacher was a brilliant teacher, but she did not know. So we do not only need time for lessons, but we need time for background informations to be as careful with the traumas as well, because at least 3 of these 6 which are named had their personal traumas.
And we need to be aware that it's our duty to look for those stories.
If they have enough trust to us. And history is a field where you can talk about one topic and you really mean another topic which is similar. And we have to keep this in mind all the time.
Okay, Shulamit asked us for examples to transmit.
You're a good student.
Yeah, always. Well, let me make use of these last minutes to tell you another history from my experience as a judge as well as a teacher. Last year, a young man and a young woman, both of 17 years old, were the protagonists of a serious threat against a Jewish young man of 16, including the exhibition of a little knife, razor, and of course anti-Semitic expressions. While the aggressors were arrested, the police noticed that the boy, besides wearing a skinhead, had written in his pants a little SS inscription. When the 2 aggressors came to the court to make their defense depositions, we discovered that in both cases, the young man and the young woman, instead of being finishing her secondary studies at 5th year, more or less, because of their ages, on the contrary, they never passed, nor finished, not even the 1st year, in despite of the efforts of their family, their mothers. Because of their systematic misbehavior, year after year, both of them failed in progress in school. In conclusion, they never had formal education, unless about what was the Nazism and what was the Holocaust. It was a failure not only for them and their families, it was a failure of the public educational system of my country. Once more, I took the challenge of replacing the punishment by a class at the Holocaust Museum and added a serious and definitive commitment directed to the accused in order to progress in the studies and finish the secondary school. Bodo talks after me about the time. Well, we are right now doing all we can to have success in this objective. In this path, 2 months ago, I had a meeting with that skinhead boy in my court, and I had plenty of satisfaction, not only because his progress in his studies, but also in discovering a surprising dense red hair growing generously in that head. A whole hopeful sign. I think that these are humble examples of what can we do if we take the challenge, if we don't resign before the fight starts against the anti-Semitic prejudice. It's a rough task, but not impossible to remove them, especially between young people, using the education, of course, as our principal tool. I think that in that individual fight, in that small achievement, rests nothing else than the consolidation of our democratic states of law, because they are the great barrier to assure us that never more something like the Shoah will happen again. Thank you.
Colleagues, I sense a real opportunity at this time. This conference is such a real example of that opportunity. Avner Shalev and Dorit Novak, by bringing us together here at Yad Vashem, you bring us home and you root us. And just reminding myself, walking around Yad Vashem the last few days, how we need to be rooted here. And thank you for doing that. And thank you for affording that for all of us. Thank you. I sense the opportunity as well, just looking at the program, which is just so varied, and the skills and the expertise and the experience and the emotion and the range of methodologies that are represented by people here, from where we were 15 or 20 years ago. To think that all of this comes together in one place is really an amazing thing. And yet we are so few, because we are spread so thinly across the world. It feels like packed into this room that there's a lot of us, but there are not many of us. Just to convey the history of the Holocaust itself, there are not enough of us to convey that to our communities in the way in which we want to do it, with the level of depth that we want to do it, with the time that we'd like to take on it. So our task is still a very stretched one. And in addition to that, we are so cognizant of the fact that there are so many things happening around the world which demand something of us, because we are all here precisely because we think about ethical issues, because we care about the past, we care about people and how they feel and what they experience, and we want to help to mend the world. That's why we're here. And yet, if our task is to do that, we're even fewer still. So I guess for me, listening to my colleagues here and hearing so many of you, I'm kind of going back. I came to rethink, and I admitted that to my group yesterday, but the rethinking is really helping, because there are going to be so many of us after this conference that can continue to share that burden and make it maybe just a little bit lighter. So thank you.
I think more and more, and we are going through that process, that the Holocaust really is beginning to serve as a paradigm. And I saw it very clearly in 1995, where 23 teachers from Rwanda came to Yad Vashem. And you can ask, why do teachers from Rwanda come to Yad Vashem? And we filmed it, and I went, the film was in French, so unfortunately I don't understand French, so I had Alain Michel translate me for about 9 hours what they said in that movie, because I wanted to understand to the depth why they came here, why they came to Yad Vashem. They suffered. Why do they have to come to Yad? Are they coming to learn about suffering, these universal things? No, they didn't come for that. And I went very thoroughly through what they said. They said, we're coming here because you're the fathers, talking about home roots. They came to learn how to commemorate the Holocaust, but what happened to them was that by meeting the survivors here, people who went through the Holocaust, by learning about the Holocaust, they got legitimacy to talk even, to open, to share their suffering, not to compare suffering, but to share their suffering and to find elements in what commemoration of the Holocaust did and how you tell the story and what you focus on. And they felt lonely before that, and they said, we want to be among you people because then we can talk, then we can open ourselves. And I think if in the right way, and I saw what programs we gave them. We brought them the survivor, and the survivors began in how they recuperated and came back to life. And I think that this gave them, they were looking like this because they were crying. They came here and they said, we feel revenge, and we began with Martha's story. And what does Martha say? She says, the first thing, I have grandchildren, and I love the world, and I like studying. And 3 things she was telling them that wasn't connected to the trauma. And she says, yes, you have to open, you have to talk about your trauma, but you also have to see the sense of it. The word isn't hope. I don't know if the word is hope, but the word is tikkun olam. In the Jewish, it's, you know, it's a phrase built in the Jewish world that there can be a repairs to what went wrong. And they went out of here, and the first thing that they told us when they came back, they did an exhibition. So they took pictures of the Holocaust, put it in front, and then they told their story in back of it. They felt this kind of connection that through the Holocaust and through the methods that they learned and through the courage that they got, they in a way can now tell their story and find directions how to cope with the past. So I think that this kind of thing that is happening today, and for us it's difficult, you know, because we want it to be very strongly that the Jewish story should be told, not to use all the time the Holocaust to trivialize it. And where Avner is sitting here, and he said the first thing will be a school which will find direction, and it's complicated. How on one hand do we continue to teach the Holocaust and really not miss the essence of what happened there, and on the other hand it becoming a universal story. So how we cope between the two will be our challenge, I think, for the next 10 years, or meeting you in 2 years in the next conference. We should see how we develop